Before you buy your next Airbnb property, I want you to imagine a scenario with me. Let's say you want to buy an Airbnb property and you find a coach and you pay that coach $10,000 to help make you a great Airbnb host and to help you find your first Airbnb property. That coach tells you that the best way to find a profitable property is to pay for AirDNA or Mashvisor or a software. So you get on that software, you spend hundreds of dollars, you look around and you find a house. A 3-bedroom house with a pool in an area that you think would be good for Airbnb. So you decide you're going to buy a 3-bedroom house with a pool, and you go back to that coach, and that coach says, hey, I've got a real estate agent that can help you buy a property. Let's get you a property. With their help, you find a 3-bedroom house with a pool, you get it listed on Airbnb, and you lose money. From day one for a whole year, you lose $3,000 a month on that property. This story happens all the time. It's remarkably common. And I personally hate that this scenario exists in the world of online influence because I'm a YouTuber too. My name is Sean Rakijic. This is the largest YouTube channel to learn how to do short-term rentals. My students have made over $1 billion doing Airbnb. So subscribe today if you haven't yet. I'd love to add you to that $1 billion wall of fame. But if I'm going to be sincere in this video, I have to confess something to you right now. I am just a business owner with a YouTube channel, and I am not the best at everything. I think I'm pretty good at Airbnb, and I'm going to try to prove that to you by the end of this video as I help you not lose thousands of dollars on your next investment. But there are some limitations that I have, and if I'm going to do right by you, I have to be honest about those. And this video only exists now because something is really wrong in this industry and with online education as a whole. People, coaches, gurus all over the internet are telling you to use a software that you should not use to pick up your next property. I'm going to give you a solution that works every time, but I need to first tell you why you cannot be using AirDNA or Mashvisor or all the rooms as your solution for market research, because they do not work, and there's 4 reasons why. Reason number 1 is the data is old. Reason number 2, the data isn't real. Reason number 3 is the data is incomplete. And reason number 4 is that data to you has absolutely no context, no expert interpretation to tell you what that data means. So buckle up, my friends. By the end of this video, you'll know enough to pick up a good property and know that you're picking up a good property and that you didn't pay a coach $10,000 to rip you off and then you lose money. And this free video has a money back guarantee. So if you don't like this video, let me know in the comments. So number 1, the accusation that the data is old. Yes, this video is going to get pretty petty, by the way, because when I get upset about a topic, I come out swinging, and I'm not going to mince my words or be nice. I think that AirDNA is trash, and this is one prime example why. There was an unfortunate influencer that was paid to promote AirDNA on a video, and he did so recently, as his job as an influencer was, and he tried to show people how to use AirDNA to determine a market or a good Airbnb property. And as he showed people how to use AirDNA, he embarrassed himself and AirDNA in a big way. He tried to click on 3 separate properties that were marked as top performers, made the most money in an area. And you know what happened? When he clicked on the listing to go from AirDNA to Airbnb, the Airbnb listing no longer existed. 3 times in a row, meaning that the best properties in this market have gone out of business. But the thing is, the listing is still on AirDNA. Why is that? And the reason why is because AirDNA collects all this past information. Out of context, they don't care about platforms. They're looking at individual listings month over month, collecting data in a certain way we'll talk about soon, and then they archive that forever. Every listing that they've ever tracked stays on AirDNA, whether or not it's listed or has been removed for whatever reason it's been removed. And if a listing from 2017 that has been closed since 2019 once was the best performing listing but no longer exists, that actually means that that listing is no longer relevant because it's no longer a top performer. It just once was at some point in time, but the world has changed. And especially with Airbnb, people's preferences and travel patterns change all the time. So a listing that would have been the best in 2019 isn't going to be the best in 2024. That's absolutely true. We can all just know that to be true. But that leads to petty accusation number 2, that the data isn't real. How do we even know that the data that we're looking at actually came from a source that we can trust? Well, in a conversation that I had with AirDNA, when they tried to recruit me to do the same thing, which was to lie to you guys about using their software, they told me that they get their data 3 different ways. One way that they get that data is to scrape the internet. They'll go to Airbnb, they'll find listings, they'll find the base rate, they'll find whatever they can about the listing, and then they stalk the calendar. They wait for calendar changes. And they take changes in the calendar as assumptions that that listing got a booking. And they try to assume at what rate that listing has got a booking from the frequency at which they monitor these listings. Level 2 is they have partnerships with softwares. Maybe it's Guesty, Tokeet, Hospitable, Hostaway, channel managers. And they try to get a data exchange from AirDNA. And in your privacy terms and your agreements with your channel manager, it should tell you that they share this information if they do. So give it a look if you're curious. But then level 3 is they are finally trying to onboard people for services like pricing regulation algorithms that help you increase your revenue, docking in directly to finally get the real data. But if you all have seen AirDNA's campaigns over the last years, they only have just recently been trying to sign up people for a pricing software of their own. This is the best way to get data, and they've actually never had it. So these listings from 2018, 19, 20, 21, they've never had pristine data to go off of. All of this data has been put together and extrapolated to try to mean something at the end of the year. I have so many students from nearly 40 countries, by the way, who look at their listings on AirDNA and are surprised to see how completely inaccurate AirDNA is about their listing. So when I say that AirDNA's data isn't real, people will also say that the data is not hygienic. The data that they're pulling in is old, inaccurate, assumptive, incomplete, and they're trying to draw a full, conclusive picture and give you a false sense of confidence on data that they shouldn't be able to give you confidence on. If I was going to pay for a service to try to tell me what made money, I would consider this to be some level of fraud. I would be upset about this. And this is one of the reasons why I don't recommend using a software to do market research. There is one I do recommend, and it is free, and you're going to be surprised when I tell you what it is. We're going to get to that in a second. But number 3, the accusation that the data is incomplete. This one is really cool, and it will make a ton of sense for any of you who've ever done any other research in your life. AirDNA, like any software, goes through and grabs everything that it can, the way that a computer can. Ones and zeros, bedroom counts, number of people that it can sleep, base nightly rates, cleaning fees, everything. All the ones and the zeros. But what it cannot grab is what type of design style is in the home? What projected budget for interior design was put into the home? How unique is this design style compared to the neighbors? What other soft amenities do they have that don't actually get listed? So for example, you can have a hot tub or a pool or a grand piano in the space, but if you have a hanging birdcage chair in the living room that looks really cool or a really cool plant wall, that's not something that AirDNA can scrape because it's not something that Airbnb lists that we can put a checkbox. And if any of you have been around this long, I'm dating myself, but like 5-6 years ago, I did my first video on market research and I talked about Boolean searches, which are all or nothing searches. For example, if you're looking for a house that sleeps 4 people, you'll select house and 4 people, and every listing that meets both parameters gets listed. That's a lot of properties. What if you wanted a house that sleeps 4 people, was a single level home, and had a pool and a hot tub? Well, now it changes. All of the listings that have a pool but no hot tub won't show up. All of the listings with a hot tub but no pool won't show up. All of the listings that have a pool and a hot tub but aren't a house won't show up. These are all or nothing searches. When you search for 5 or 6 things, Airbnb will only serve you everything that has 100%. That's the way Airbnb's been designed. That's a fun fact that you can use when you do market research. Combinations of searches allow you to find underserviced niches, and I teach that in a webinar called Gap Market Research. It is my most advanced market research techniques. We'll talk about that more later in the video, because I want to get back to this tangent about incomplete information here. Because AirDNA only scrapes that stuff, it misses all the stuff that actually matters to the guest. AirDNA can find the stuff that maybe matters to Airbnb's algorithm, which we're also going to talk about, but when a guest looks at a listing, they're looking at the photos. Can AirDNA give you a score that says these photos on a scale of 1 to 10 are mid? No. They don't know if the photos are good. They can't tell you that the listing having 24 photos as opposed to 7 means anything. They can't tell you that the host took 14 photos of the living room and that the listing is really boring because it's all a bunch of photos of the living room. AirDNA cannot assess the competitive marketing quality of a listing. They do not have the capability in their software to do this type of soft analysis on all of the stuff that cannot be scraped. AirDNA fails here. And this is why their data is incomplete. It's maybe the most important part of doing market research. Why do people book a space? They do not just book because of the number of beds or the number of bedrooms or if there's a hot tub. Because if that hot tub or pool looks like old Greg lives there, no one's going to want to get into that hot tub or pool. It has to look nice. And photo quality, location, quality of host conversation, the copywriting, all of these things play into whether or not somebody books. And AirDNA and Mashvisor and all the rooms, they just whiff on this. They just can't collect that. And that brings us to number 4, which is that outside of the context of the reports that you get on AirDNA, of all the charts and the percentages, you actually do not know what it all means. If I told you that one market had an average occupancy of 55% and an average ADR of $200, where another market had an average occupancy of 80% with an ADR of $200, you might think that those are different. Well, at the end of the day, ADR only matters because ADR is all of your nights, including your empty ones. And so your total revenue is your ADR. Maybe the market that has 80% occupancy has less competition because more of the demand is soaking up all of the supply. And in a vacuum, hosts are just as good as they are. So you've got good hosts, mid hosts, and bad hosts. Any market that has 80% average occupancy means that even the bad hosts are getting booked. So even though the one with 55% occupancy might make you believe that there's more room for upside, it actually means that that market is oversaturated because the demand is what the demand is. And you're going to have to fight the average host to get to 55% occupancy. And everything above 55% is a dogfight. So a market that has the same end of year revenue, but a higher average occupancy means you'll have an easier time making that end of year revenue. You'll probably have a better chance at a higher upside in those markets too, because the demand is there. And what people are paying for is only based on what supply is available. And if everything is constantly getting booked and you're the best listing in a market, you can set your prices higher than everyone else and you'll still get booked. But a market with a low average occupancy, you're going to have to fight with other hosts to get booked, meaning that the guest has all the power. So when I look at data, I try to look at the unasked questions and try to find some really cool nuanced answers. And I've told my students to go some really strange places based on the information that I've given. About 5 or 6 years ago, a student of mine asked, "Where would you go right now?" And I told him Birmingham, Alabama. And the reason why is there were not good hosts there. He immediately got up to 18 listings, was the biggest and best host in Birmingham, and then 2 years later, AirDNA did a report that listed Birmingham, Alabama as the #1 place to do Airbnb. But that was based on trailing data. My advice for him was me projecting based on the current market and what I think was going to happen next year. This is again a sign that the softwares will always be a couple years behind the curve because someone is going to make and prove the market, and then the softwares are going to go, hey, the data looks good here. But somebody had to get there first for the data to look good there. And if you want to make really good money, you got to get ahead of the curve, not behind it. I know I'm talking a lot of smack in this video. I talk trash about AirDNA. I'm talking trash about the truth, which is that if you line up 10 of the biggest influencers in this industry, 10 of the best know-it-alls in this space, 9 of them, when they say that they're going to teach you market research, will just send you a referral link and a webinar on how to use AirDNA or how to use Mashvisor, because they don't know anything about this space. They don't know anything about market research. They don't know the consequences of not knowing. That's how little that they know. I'm the only person in this space that apparently will tell you that the best place to do market research is right on the Airbnb platform. And I'm going to tell you why. Not only is it free, but everything that we do is dependent on Airbnb, is it not? Airbnb has an algorithm. And just like I said before, AirDNA will serve you up every listing they've ever collected information on. But when they show you all of these listings on what listings are the best for you to invest in, it doesn't do so through the lens of the Airbnb algorithm. Airbnb, if you ever search a city like Dallas or Dubai or Denver or Chicago, the listings will change. The nature of those listings will change. Sometimes they'll be condos. Sometimes they'll be big log cabins or mansions. Sometimes they'll be ranch houses. Sometimes they'll be townhouses. Sometimes they'll be B-class apartments. But they are always different, and they are always different because the customers are different and the customers' interests and needs are ever evolving and ever changing. If you want to get down to what actually makes money on Airbnb, we need to know what Airbnb thinks that they are going to make their money on. If you search on Airbnb in any city, select any week, I'm flexible for your date range, and then 3 guests or 12 guests, just to parse for size, Airbnb will serve you up the best listings for 3 guests or the best listings for 12, where they think that they are most likely to get bookings. Airbnb is telling you their favorite listings through the lens of their audience, their customer base, and their favorite listings. If you go to Airbnb, they will serve you 100 listings outside of context, outside of the algorithm. You go to Airbnb, they'll tell you exactly what is making money today, not what made money 5 years ago, and they do it in rank. So when we see the first page of Airbnb and start to do our market research there, we can start to see a trend in the data. What types of properties, what size, what location, what amenities, photo style, design style, all this other stuff. And we can start to build what I call a thesis. We go through the first 2 pages of Airbnb for any neighborhood, and we start to develop a theory as to why we think listings make money and which ones will make money. So that way we can say, if I picked up this type of property, I would make money, but for this reason. That is my thesis. I'll say it again. If I pick up this type of property, shape, color, size, I will make money for this reason. Market forces, customer type, whatever. I then try to prove or disprove my thesis. And this is what I teach my students to do. Research to develop a thesis and then try to prove and or disprove it, and then do it again until you find one that gives you a lot of confidence. And I do have some shortcuts. People who want to pick up a property in an area fast and they want to know that they're going to make money. I have ways to prove that a market can be profitable on Airbnb without having to do tons and tons and tons of research. That is something that I teach in Gap Market Research. That is the lowest cost way that you can learn all of my market research techniques to get down to what properties make the most money. But beyond that, you might have an interesting situation. You might have a property that you already own and you're trying to find out if it makes sense to Airbnb it or how to make it profitable. You might be stuck doing this remotely. You might have a ton of investment capital. You might have a unique situation that separates you from everybody else and you want to talk to me directly. If you want to talk to me, yes, I am available. I coach, like I said, thousands of students from almost 40 different countries. I've seen it all in the last 10 years, and my students have made $1 billion under my coaching. And if you'd like to learn more about my coaching, there's a link down below to learn about cracking Superhost and to talk to my team. But for all of you who want the free content, I'm not going to let you down, I promise. I've got a playlist on market research. If you already have a property and it's too late and you're trying to save your failing listing, 2 playlists. I have one playlist on design and I have one playlist on pricing strategy. Those 2 pillars of topic matter can save a listing. I can't guarantee that your listing is right for the job. Some listings just have poor product market fit, like I talked about in a recent video, but every listing has the capability of doing its best. And if you are set to make sure that your current listing can do its best, design and pricing are the 2 ways to get to the top. Feel free to put your questions down below. I'll answer as many as I can, as fast as I can, and maybe I'll make another video just because you asked a cool question. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through to the end. You're my favorite people. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.